Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. Humanity discovers the Galactic Empire and laughs at their feeble might. The unexpected encounter, the hum of the engines echoed through the cold, empty space. The crew of the Pioneer were far from home, drifting in the outer reaches of the galaxy. They had been on a simple mission: explore uncharted areas, gather data, and return nothing special. But today everything was about to change. Captain Naomi Harris stood at the bridge, gazing out into the vast darkness. The stars twinkled like tiny diamonds. In the endless void, everything was normal too. Normal. She had expected to encounter unknown planets or asteroid fields, but not this. Captain called out Lieutenant Max Jensen from the communications sill. "We've detected something unusual, a signal, very faint, but it's definitely a signal." Naomi's interest piqued. "What kind of signal?" "Hard to say," Jensen replied, his voice tight with curiosity. "It's not like anything we've seen before. It's not natural." Naomi leaned over the console, her fingers tracing the holographic display of the signal pattern. It was unlike any known transmission. Something about it was strange, almost ancient. "Keep tracking it," Naomi ordered, her voice steady, but filled with growing intrigue. "Let's see where it leads." The signal grew stronger as they followed its course, leading them further into deep space. The crew of the Pioneer had been prepared for anything: an asteroid field, a black hole, or even an alien civilization. What they didn't expect was a massive ship suddenly appearing in front of them, as if out of nowhere. "Hold on," Naomi shouted as the crew scrambled to adjust the ship's course. The massive object loomed in front of them, its size so enormous it seemed to fill the entire view screen. It was like a floating city, a hulking behemoth of metal and technology. Its surface was covered with dark, intricate patterns, alien writing perhaps, or just the scars of time. The ship's shape was unlike anything the crew had seen before. It looked like a warship, but ancient, worn down by the passage of centuries. Yet there was something about it that sent a shiver down Naomi's spine. It was wrong. Something didn't fit. Are we going to board it?" asked Lieutenant Jensen, his voice uneasy. Naomi hesitated. The ship's appearance was far from welcoming, but there was a pull, a sense of mystery that was too strong to ignore. The signal had come from here, and it was too important to leave unexplored. "We don't have a choice. Prepare for boarding." The crew geared up in full space suits, their breath steady in the sealed helmets. The air inside the ship was silent, almost as if it had been abandoned for centuries. The Pioneer crew stepped off their ship and onto the strange, cold surface of the alien vessel. The atmosphere was thick with the unknown. As they moved further into the ship, they noticed the eerie quiet, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing in the long, empty halls. The walls were lined with unfamiliar marking signs that seemed to be part of the ship's old language, a language that none of them could decipher. "What is this place?" whispered Lieutenant Jensen, his voice barely audible. Captain Naomi couldn't answer. She was too busy staring at a large panel on the wall that seemed to come to life as they approached it. Flickered for a moment, then hummed softly, as if waking up from a long slumber. "Captain, look at this, dear." Emily Roberts, the ship's chief scientist, she stood in front of a control panel, her eyes wide with wonder. "This is some kind of alien technology. It's ancient, but it's still functioning." The crew gathered around, staring at the glowing symbols and buttons. The technology seemed far beyond anything they had in their possession, yet it looked so old. It was as if the ship had been built by a civilization long lost to time, a civilization that had once been far more powerful than anything they could imagine. Suddenly a low sound came from the far end of the hall, like a distant rumble. The crew froze, their breath held. The sound grew louder, closer. Something or someone was moving aboard the ship. "Everyone stay alert," Naomi ordered, her voice firm. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. As they made their way deeper into the ship, they encountered strange symbols and remnants of alien technology that were both advanced and primitive at the same time. There were strange doors that slid open without warning, and hallways that seemed to stretch on forever. The crew's curiosity grew with each step, but so did their sense of unease. Then they came across a large chamber, its walls covered in alien writing. At the center of the room was a strange glowing object resting on a pedestal. It looked almost like a crystal, but its surface shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist. Dr. Roberts stepped forward, her hand reaching out. This is it. This is the key. What do you mean the key? Naomi asked. This object, Roberts continued, is not just a piece of technology. It's something much bigger. It could be the key to understanding the entire ship, and maybe even the galaxy. Before anyone could respond, the floor beneath them began to tremble and the chamber's walls began to shift. The ship was alive. They had triggered something. Naomi's mind raced. She had always known that space was full of secrets, but nothing could have prepared her for this. As the ship's ancient systems began to reactivate, she realized that they were not just on a ship. They had stumbled upon a sleeping giant, one that had the power to change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy, and it was waking up. The discovery. The Pioneer crew stood frozen in the eerie glow of the ancient chamber, staring at the glowing object on the pedestal. It pulsed with an otherworldly light, its colors shifting in a mesmerizing pattern. Dr. Roberts stepped forward, her heart racing. She knew they had found something monumental, but what was it, and why did it feel like the whole ship was waking up around them? Captain, we need to take this back to the ship, Dr. Roberts said, her voice trembling with excitement. This might be the key to everything. Naomi nodded, her mind already racing with the possibilities. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This wasn't just some ancient artifact. This could be the key to unlocking the secrets of the Galactic Empire, or something far greater. Prepare to secure the object, Naomi ordered. We'll bring it back to the Pioneer. But just as Dr. Roberts reached for the artifact, the entire chamber shuddered. The lights flickered, and the walls began to rumble. It was as if the ship itself was alive, reacting to their presence. Captain, we need to move now, Lieutenant Jensen shouted, his voice panicked. Before Naomi could respond, the chamber door slammed shut with a deepening bang. The crew was trapped inside. What the hell is going on? Lieutenant Jensen demanded, his hand gripping his weapon. Naomi's heart raced. She could feel the ship's power surging around them. It was no longer just a relic from the past. It was a living, breathing entity. Stay calm, everyone, Naomi ordered, her voice steady. Despite the chaos unfolding around them, we need to figure out what's going on, dear. Roberts, what can you tell us about that object? Dr. Roberts examined the artifact closely, her fingers trembling as she touched its smooth surface. It's alien, obviously, but it's more than that. This object is tied to the ship itself. I think it's some sort of power source, or maybe a control system. If we can figure out how to activate it, we might be able to control the shiplet and do it. Then Naomi said, her voice firm. We don't have time to waste. The crew quickly moved to the control panel near the pedestal, their eyes darting nervously as the ship groaned and shifted around on them. The walls were vibrating, and the entire vessel seemed to be coming alive with each passing second. It felt like something was watching them, waiting. Naomi's fingers hovered over the control panel, uncertain. There were symbols here similar to the ones they had seen all over the ship, but they were completely foreign, impossible to decipher. Captain, we don't have the time to figure this out, Lieutenant Jensen urged. We need to leave now. Naomi shook her head. We can't. If this ship is connected to the Galactic Empire, this might be the key to understanding everything. We need to know what we're dealing with. Just then, a loud metallic clang echoed from the hallway outside. Something or someone was approaching. The crew froze, listening to the sound of heavy footsteps growing louder. What the hell was that? Lieutenant Jensen whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Naomi felt the tension in the air thick and heavy. His ship was more than just a relic. It was a trap, and they were in the middle of it. We need to get out of here, Naomi said, her voice urgent. Move quickly, but stay alert. The crew backed away from the control panel, and the glowing object, their weapons raised. Every step they took was cautious, each creak of the floor sending a ripple of unease through their bodies. The footsteps grew louder, and soon they could see shadows moving in the dim light. Get ready, Naomi whispered as they turned to leave the chamber. The door they had entered from suddenly slid open, revealing a group of figures standing in the hallway. They were tall, armored beings, their faces hidden behind dark helmets. The humans froze, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. Entering the Empire's territory, the crew of the Pioneers stood In a tense silence, as the armored figures surrounded them, their eyes hidden behind dark helmets, the air fell thick with danger. The words of the mysterious protector echoed in their minds. "Leave now or be destroyed, Naomi." Harris, ever the leader, took a deep breath, her mind racing. She knew they couldn't just back down now. They had come too far, discovered too much to leave empty-handed, but the figures before them clearly weren't going to let them explore any further without a fight. Captain Lieutenant Jensen said, his voice tied with fear, "We can't take them all on. There's too many of them." Naomi's eyes flicked to the exit. It was still open. But there was no guarantee they could make it out safely. The figures seemed to have formed a barricade blocking the only way out. "We're not going to fight," Naomi said, her voice steady, "but we need answers, and we're going to get them. I won't let them intimidate us before anyone could respond." One of the figures stepped forward. Its movements were slow and deliberate, like it was assessing the crew, weighing its options. Then, without warning, it reached out and touched a panel on the wall. The ship's systems hummed in response, and the doors leading deeper into the vessel slid open, revealing the dark, winding corridor. The figure gestured for the crew to follow. Naomi's heart pounded in her chest. Was this some kind of test, a trap? Or had they finally found a way into the heart of the ship? "Move," she ordered. The crew stepped cautiously into the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they walked, the walls seemed to close in on them, the ship's once silent hum now vibrating through their bones. The passage was narrow and cold, and they couldn't help but feel as though they were being washed. Every corner they turned, every new door they opened, brought them deeper into the ship, further into the unknown. The temperature dropped, and strange symbols appeared on the walls, glowing faintly as if warning them to turn back. But Naomi was resolute. There was no going back now, not after everything they had discovered. The hallway eventually opened into a large chamber, larger than anything they had seen so far. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows, and in the center stood a massive throne-like chair. Behind it, a giant screen flickered on, displaying a galaxy map with hundreds of planets highlighted in red. Some of the planets had strange symbols beside them, others were marked with alarming colors like warnings. This was no ordinary ship. This was a command center. At the far end of the room, another figure appeared, unlike the other. This one didn't wear armor. It was tall, humanoid, and its face was obscured by a hooded cloak. The air in the room grew heavy as the figure stepped forward, and Naomi could feel the intensity of its gaze on her. The figure didn't need to speak for Naomi to understand the Empire was watching them, and it was no ordinary Empire. "You've entered the heart of the Empire," the figure said, its voice deep and unsettling, echoing in Naomi's mind. Naomi didn't flinch. "Who are you?" The figure stepped closer, and as it did, the air seemed to shimmer like it was surrounded by a powerful energy field. "I am a keeper of the old ways. I have watched your kind for centuries. You are not the first to stumble upon this ship, but you are the first to survive." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Naomi felt a chill run through her. This wasn't just a random encounter. This ship, this empire, was much more than they had ever imagined. "What is this place?" Dr. Roberts asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What happened to the Empire?" The figure's eyes glowed faintly beneath the hood. "The Empire fell long ago, but it was never truly destroyed. It has merely slumbered." Lieutenant Jensen repeated, a confused frown on his face. "What do you mean? The Empire is still here?" The figure nodded slowly. "The Empire was vast. It spanned galaxies, ruled with an iron fist. But it was undone by its own arrogance. The flaws you have uncovered are just the beginning. This ship, this place, holds the key to its rebirth. But it will not be without cost." Naomi's mind raced. The pieces were slowly falling into place. This wasn't just a discovery of an ancient empire. It was the discovery of something that could change the galaxy forever, and the humans had found it. "Why show us this?" Naomi asked, her voice steady, though her heart was beating faster than she wanted to admit. "Why bring us here?" The figure tilted its head slightly. "Because you are the ones who found the weakness. You are the ones who will decide the fate of what remains. Will you join us, or will you walk away?" The room fell silent, and Naomi's crew exchanged uneasy glances. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The fate of the galaxy seemed to rest on her shoulders. Could they really walk away from this, or would they be tempted by the power that lay within this ancient empire? The figure's voice echoed again, this time colder. "Make your choice." Naomi stood frozen, her mind racing. They had come this far, but now with the truth of the Empire's history before them, she realized there was no going back. The Pioneer had already made its mark on the galaxy, and whatever they chose now would change the course of everything. But was she ready to face what that meant? The weakness, the weight of the moment pressed down on Captain Naomi Harris as she stood before the cloaked figure. Her crew gathered behind her. The words of the figure echoed in her mind. "You are the ones who will decide the fate of what remains." The air was thick with tension. The choice seemed simple at first: walk away, leave this ancient empire behind. But the more Naomi thought about it, the more she realized there was no turning back now. The figure gestured to the enormous screen behind the throne, which continued to display the galaxy map pulsing with energy. Naomi's eyes narrowed. This was no ordinary map. Each red dot marked a planet under the Empire's control, with countless others highlighted in various shades, some indicating strength, others weakness. "What are these?" Naomi asked, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. "These are the planets that the Empire once ruled," the figure said, stepping closer. "But there is a flaw, a weakness hidden in plain sight." Naomi felt a chill run through her spine. The figure's words hung heavy in the air, and it was clear that what it was about to reveal could change everything. She had a sense that the Empire, despite its once mighty reach, wasn't as invincible as it seemed, and now they were about to find out why. The figure extended one arm, and the map zoomed in on a specific part of the galaxy. It centered on a small, seemingly insignificant planet in the outer rim. Naomi felt a sudden sense of foreboding. There was something about this planet that felt different. "This," the figure said, pointing to the planet, "is the heart of the Empire's downfall." Naomi and her crew leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the planet. It appeared peaceful, almost forgotten by the rest of the galaxy, but the Empire had failed to protect it, and that failure had cost them everything. "Tell us what happened here," Roberts asked, her voice filled with a mixture of fascination and fear. The figure paused, its hooded face unreadable. "Long ago, the Empire expanded too quickly. It grew too powerful, but in its arrogance it overlooked the cracks forming in its foundation. One such crack was this planet. The Empire's technology, its power, relied on a single centralized system, a system that controlled everything: communications, defense, even the very movement of its fleets. But it was vulnerable." Naomi's mind raced. "You're saying the Empire relied on one system, one weak?" The figure nodded slowly. "Yes. And that weakness was discovered here on this planet. A group of rebels, small in number but brilliant in their understanding of technology, infiltrated the Empire's core systems. They exploited the flaw in the communications network. They broadcasted a signal that spread throughout the Empire, disrupting its entire infrastructure. The Empire could no longer function as one. Its fleets were at its planets isolated, and in that moment of chaos it fell." The crew stared at the map in disbelief. An entire empire brought down by a single weakness. It seemed impossible that the evidence was right in front of them. The Empire, despite its vastness, had been vulnerable all along. So the Empire was destroyed by its own arrogance, Lieutenant Jensen asked, his voice filled with awe. The figure's voice grew colder. "Yes. But that is not the end of the story. The Empire may have fallen, but its systems, its technology still exist, and they are waiting to be activated." Naomi took a step forward. "You're telling us that the Empire's technology is still here, still capable of being used?" The figure nodded again. "Yes, the ship you've boarded is one of many scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden away, waiting for the right moment to rise again. And you humans have found the key to its resurrection." Naomi's heart raced. They had uncovered something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The Empire's power was still very much alive, lying dormant, just waiting to be awakened, and they had discovered its weakness, the very thing that could bring it back to life. But there was a catch. "This ship is not alone," the figure continued, its tone grave. "There are many others, each carrying pieces of the Empire's legacy, but they are also vulnerable, and that vulnerability is the only hope you have. The flaw, the weakness in the system, can still be exploited, but it must be done carefully. If you're not careful, the Empire will rise again, stronger than ever before. Naomi felt a wave of realization wash over her. This was the choice. The power to bring down the Empire was within their reach, but it came with a heavy price. The question was no longer if they would use the weakness. They had already discovered it. The question was how they would use it. Will we control it? Naomi asked, her voice low. The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it looked at the crew as if weighing their worth. Then it spoke again, its voice colder than ever. That depends on you. Naomi's mind raced. She now held the key to either destroy the Empire completely or bring it back to life with all its power. It was a responsibility unlike any she had ever known. Could the humans really control this power, or would they make the same mistakes as the Empire before them? Her crew exchanged looks, each of them aware that this discovery had shifted everything. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were players in a game much larger than they had ever imagined. The Empire technology, Naomi said slowly, is both a gift and a curse. We need to be careful with it. We need to figure out how to use it wisely. The figure stepped back, its form fading into the shadows of the room. That is for you to decide. And with that, the room fell silent. Naomi turned back to her crew. She knew that the path ahead would not be easy. They had the power to reshape the galaxy, but how they chose to wield it would determine the future of everything. It was a choice they had to make, and it had to be the right one. Laughing at the Empire, the crew of the pioneers stood in stunned silence as the last words of the figure echoed in their minds. That is for you to decide. The weight of the responsibility was almost unbearable. Naomi could feel it pressing down on her, a decision that could either lead to a new age of power or the complete destruction of everything they had fought for. The Empire was no longer just an ancient relic. It was something real, something dangerous, and now it was in their hands. Naomi turned to face her crew. They looked at her, their faces a mixture of confusion, fear, and uncertainty. They knew what was at stake. They had discovered the weakness that had destroyed the Empire once before, and now they held the power to either control or destroy it. Captain Lieutenant Jen spoke up, his voice steady but filled with concern. What are we going to do? Can we really control something like this? What happens if we make the wrong move? Naomi looked at the galaxy map that still flickered on the screen, the red dots marking the Empire's former territories. The power was there waiting, but so was the danger. We need to think carefully, Naomi said, her voice strong. We can't be reckless with this power. The Empire fell because of its arrogance, its belief that it was invincible. We can't make the same mistake. We need to learn from it. The crew nodded in agreement. Dr. Robert stepped forward, her eyes still wide with wonder. This could change everything. The Empire's technology, its defenses, its fleets, it's all still out there, and the weakness, it's right under our noses. If we can exploit it, we could control the galaxy, or at least protect it from threats. We could make sure nothing like the Empire ever rises again. The words hung in the air like a heavy burden. The temptation was there, the allure of power that could reshape the entire galaxy. But Naomi knew the dangers too well. It wasn't just about controlling the power, it was about not becoming what they had just defeated. There's something else, Naomi said, her mind still racing. We've discovered this weakness, but we also know the Empire's mistakes. We can't be like them. We can't let ourselves become blinded by power. The crew stood still for a moment, each of them grappling with the gravity of Naomi's words. But then something unexpected happened. Jensen let out a nervous laugh, the sound almost out of place in the heavy silence. What? Naomi turned to him. Raising an eyebrow, Jensen chuckled again, a little more easily this time. It's crazy, isn't it? All this time we thought the Empire was unstoppable, this massive, unshakable force. And then we find out it all fell apart because of one little flaw, one tiny mistake. And now here we are sitting in the middle of their old empire, holding the key to everything. I guess they weren't as powerful as they thought. The rest of the crew exchanged surprised looks, and then slowly they all started to laugh. It was nervous at first, but soon it became genuine. It felt almost absurd, the idea that the mighty empire had crumbled under its own weight, and now here they were, humans, simple Explorers holding the power to shake the galaxy. You're right, Dr. Roberts said still. Smiling, the Empire was so sure of itself, so certain that nothing could bring it down. And now it's all in our hands. It's almost like they never saw us coming. Naomi laughed to the tension in her shoulders, easing for just a moment. I guess we can add laughing at the Empire to our list of accomplishments. For a brief moment, the crew felt a strange sense of triumph. They were the ones who had uncovered the flaw. They were the ones who had found the weakness that had torn the Empire apart. And as they stood there laughing at the thought of such a powerful empire being brought to its knees by something so small, they felt a sense of power themselves. But the laughter didn't last long. Reality came rushing back in an instant. They couldn't ignore the consequences of their discovery. The power they held now could change everything. But so could the mistakes they made. We still need to figure out what to do with all this, Naomi said, her tone returning to its serious edge. We can't just walk away from this. If we're going to use this technology, we need to do it right. We can't let ourselves become what we just laughed at the Empire thinking we're invincible. Jensen wiped the smile from his face, his expression turning serious. Again, yeah, I get it. It's just the idea that we humans found the thing that broke the Empire. It's kind of mind-blowing. It is, Naomi agreed. But we need to stay focused. There's still a long road ahead of us. The Empire may have fallen, but there are still dangers out there. We don't know what kind of enemies or allies we might encounter. This isn't over. Dar Roberts nodded. We need to be careful. We've uncovered something powerful, but we can't let it control us. The Empire thought it was invincible, and look where that got them. Naomi turned back to the galaxy map. The red dots were still there, still marking the remains of the Empire. But now it wasn't just a map of an ancient force. It was a map of their future. They had the power to reshape the galaxy, but only if they played their cards right. We won't let history repeat itself, Naomi said firmly. We'll control this power, but only for good. The crew nodded, a new sense of determination in their eyes. They had laughed at the Empire's weakness, but now they understand the seriousness of their situation. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were the ones who would shape the future of the galaxy. And it all started with the choices they made from this point forward. The Empire strikes back. The laughter that had filled the room quickly faded, replaced by a heavy silence. The crew of the Pioneers stood before the galaxy map, their eyes tracing the scattered remnants of the Empire's former territories. The temptation to wield such power was overwhelming, but Naomi Harris knew they had to be cautious. The stakes were too high to act impulsively, but no sooner had they decided to take a careful approach than the ship began to rumble, deep vibrations shaking the walls around them. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the crew as they exchanged worried glances. Captain Lieutenant Jensen called out, his voice tense. Something's wrong. The ship's systems are acting up. It feels like we're being hunted. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. She had been expecting complications, but nothing prepared her for the sudden realization that the Empire wasn't just a fallen empire. It had left behind an even greater danger, one that had been lying dormant, waiting for a trigger. The moment they had activated the ship's systems, they had likely set something into motion. Are we under attack? Naomi asked, her voice sharp, as she quickly moved to the control panel. No sign of hostile ships, Captain. Dar Roberts replied, eyes glued to the console. But something is definitely happening. The Empire's security systems are coming online. We've triggered something, and I don't think they're happy. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the ship, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps reverberating in the halls outside. Naomi's breath quickened as she looked at her crew. They had no idea who or what was approaching. The figure they had met earlier in the throne room had warned them. The Empire does not tolerate trespassers. Now Naomi understood exactly what that meant. We need to move now, Naomi ordered, her voice a calm contrast to the chaos around them. She knew they had to get out of the heart of the ship before whatever was coming found them. The crew rushed to the exits, but the doors suddenly slammed shut with an ear-splitting clang, trapping them inside. Naomi's heart pounded as she realized that the ship was not just a relic. It was alive with defense mechanisms that were still functioning perfectly. The Empire may have fallen, but its protection systems were still intact, and they were in full operation now. "What's happening?" Lieutenant Jensen yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "We're locked in. What do? We stay calm," Naomi said, turning to face her crew. "Dr. Roberts, is there any way to override the security systems? Can we shut them down?" Dr. Roberts quickly examined the control panels, her fingers flying across the screen. "I might be able to access the security network, but I'll need time. It's all encrypted, and I'm not sure how deep the system goes." As if on key, the heavy footsteps outside grew louder, and Naomi's eyes flicked to the door. The hum of energy shields filled the air. Whatever was coming was getting closer. "We don't have much time," Naomi said, her voice steady. "Do what you can, but we need a plan B if this doesn't work." Jensen, Roberts, get to the secondary control room. "I'll cover you." The crew moved quickly, heading towards the backup control room, but as they approached, the lights dimmed and the walls started to shake. It felt like the entire ship was responding to their presence, as if it was aware of their every move. Then a deep mechanical voice echoed through the ship, vibrating the air. "Intruders detected. Neutralization protocol activated. All personnel to combat stations." Naomi's grip tightened on her weapon as the voice repeated louder this time. "Intruders detected. Neutralization protocol activated." A sudden flash of light blazed from a corridor to their left, and a group of heavily armored soldiers appeared, their weapons raised, their eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were defenders, the last line of defense left behind by the Empire, programmed to fight until the end. "We've triggered something. We've awoken their last defense," Naomi murmured, realization hitting her like a ton of bricks. Without hesitation, she raised her weapon and fired. The blast hit one of the armored figures, but it barely slowed the creature down. The soldiers advanced, their weapons emitting high-energy pulses. Naomi and her crew returned fire, but the armored soldiers moved with frightening precision, their technology far superior to anything the humans had seen before. "Get to the control room," Naomi shouted, her voice urgent. The crew sprinted toward the backup control room, the heavy footfalls of the soldiers pounding behind them. Inside the control room, Dr. Roberts quickly began typing commands into the console. I'm accessing their systems, but it's going to take a minute to disable the security protocols." Outside, the soldiers closed in, their weapons glowing with deadly intent. The walls seemed to be closing in on the crew, the ship itself now a maze of shifting corridors and enemy forces. Every direction was a potential ambush. "We don't have a minute," Jensen yelled. "We're running out of time, Captain." Naomi's mind raced. They had to disable the security system before the soldiers overwhelmed them, but the ship's defense mechanisms were relentless. It was like the Empire had predicted this exact situation, humans stumbling upon their weaknesses, and had prepared for it. "We hold them off for as long as we can," Naomi ordered. Roberts, "keep working. We'll cover you." The crew braced themselves as the door to the control room burst open. The armored soldiers flooded in, their weapons raised, but Naomi and the crew were ready. They fought with everything they had, desperate to survive and secure the ship. The room was a blur of energy, blasts, and flashing lights. The crew fought fiercely, but the soldiers were too many and too strong. Just as Naomi felt like they were losing, Dr. Roberts yelled out, "I've got it. The systems are shutting down." The soldiers froze for a split second, their movements stuttering as the control systems were overridden. Naomi took that moment to strike her weapon, blasting the nearest soldier to the ground. The crew moved quickly, using their last bit of strength to disable the remaining soldiers. The ship fell silent. The control room was a mess of sparks and debris, but the crew had survived for now. Naomi looked around at her team. "We're not out of this yet, but we're still alive." The fight wasn't over. The Empire may have been dormant for centuries, but it was still deadly. And now Naomi and her crew had to make a choice: continue down the path they had started or turned back before it was too late. The final victory. The silence in the control room was deafening. Naomi Harris and her crew stood panting, covered in sweat and grime from the brutal fight. Sparks from the damaged consoles crackled in the air, and the remnants of the Empire soldiers lay scattered across the floor. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but Naomi knew the danger wasn't over. They had survived the first wave, but what would come next? Captain, Dr. Roberts said, her voice exhausted But Resolute, I've disabled the ship's primary security protocols. We've taken down the last line of defense for now. We have control. Naomi gave a small nod, trying to keep the weight of the situation in check. They were alive, but they had just come face to face with the full might of the Empire's defenses. If they hadn't been quick, if they hadn't outsmarted the ship's systems, it could have ended very differently. What now? Jensen asked, his voice tense but hopeful. Naomi turned to face the galaxy map still flickering on the screen. The red dots, representing the Empire's former territories, blinked. Ominously, the Empire might have fallen, but the technology, the power, was still very much alive. The choice was theirs to make. The path forward could lead to unimaginable power, or it could lead to even greater destruction. We got the power, Naomi said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. But we need to make sure we use it the right way. The Empire's mistakes were born of arrogance. We're not going to repeat that. The crew exchanged looks, each of them understanding the gravity of the decision they faced. They had the means to reshape the galaxy. They could take the remnants of the Empire's power and use it to protect or dominate. They could rebuild the Empire, but they could also destroy it once and for all. We could restore order, Roberts said thoughtfully, create a new power structure that could prevent future chaos. The galaxy needs a strong hand. Naomi shook her head. The Empire's strength came from its control, its obsession with power. We're not going to build that again. We're going to make sure something like the Empire never rises again. The room fell silent. The weight of Naomi's words hung heavy in the air. The crew had fought hard to survive, to take control of the Empire's power. Now they had to choose how to wield it. They could become rulers of the galaxy or its protectors, but they couldn't afford to make the same mistakes. We need to ensure the Empire's technology doesn't fall into the wrong hands, Naomi continued. It's too dangerous, too powerful. We'll safeguard it, protect it, and make sure that no one can ever misuse it again. Lieutenant Jensen nodded. You're right, Captain. We've seen what happens when power is abused. The Empire wasn't invincible, and we don't want to fall into the same trap. Roberts was quiet for a moment, but then she spoke up. Then let's make sure the Empire's legacy doesn't go to waste. We'll take what we've learned, and we'll create something better, something for the future, not the past. Naomi turned back to the galaxy map. We'll make sure the galaxy knows we're here, that we're watching. We'll protect the people, help those who need it, and stop any new threats before they grow. But we won't be an empire, we'll be something else entirely. With a final look at the crew, Naomi took a deep breath. They had survived the impossible, but the true challenge was just beginning. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were guardians of the galaxy, protectors of the future. The Empire's time was over, but their time was just beginning. Naomi stepped away from the console and walked towards the door. Let's get to work. We've got a galaxy to protect. The crew followed her, the weight of their responsibility settling on their shoulders. The Empire had fallen, but the journey wasn't over now. They had the chance to create a new future, one where power was used wisely, where humanity could rise as a beacon of hope, and a galaxy scared by the past. And with that, the Pioneer set its course. The crew was ready. The galaxy would never be the same again.